Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified. Here we have taken important articles and the news clippings that have appeared in the Hindu newspaper, Delhi edition. Also, we have taken a mains practice question keeping in mind the upcoming mains examination. The important articles of the discussion are listed on your screen. Moving on to the first article of the day, the article is featured on page 9 of the Hindu. Now the article talks about the recent cyclone Biparjoy, which highlights a part of a new trend in the Indian cyclone. Now this topic is important if we look at the syllabus of GS1, which talks about the important geophysical phenomena such as earthquakes, tsunami, volcanic activity, cyclones, etc. Now UPSC in the mains examination as well as the prelims examination has continuously asked questions related to cyclone. They have also asked questions related to air mass. So this area becomes important from the perspective of mains as well as the prelims examination. As a question in 2014 was asked regarding the tropical cyclone and why basically they are largely confined to South China Sea, Bay of Bengal and the Gulf of Mexico. And a question on similar line was also seen in the year 2013 where they asked about the recent cyclone on the east coast of India and how are the tropical cyclones named across the world. Through this article, we'll try to understand what basically is the new trend in the Indian cyclone. Now the article highlights with data and the figures that the evolution of cyclone Biparjoy is a gradual trend but highlights an undesirable change in the nature of Arabian Sea. Because Arabian Sea was relatively always cooler when it was compared to the Bay of Bengal in the North Indian Ocean. Through this article, we'll try to understand why traditionally the West Indian Ocean or the Arabian Sea had experienced less number of tropical cyclones in the past. Now, the West Indian Ocean or the Arabian Sea has experienced less number of tropical cyclones in the past, and this is evident by the fact that the ratio of cyclones between Arabian Sea and that of Bay of Bengal has been on the ratio of 1:4, meaning thereby for every one cyclone that is occurring in the Arabian Sea, there were 4 cyclones that occurred in Bay of Bengal. And following are the reasons that are given as an explanation for more number of cyclones in the Bay of Bengal. The first reason highlighted here is that of average temperature. Now, the average temperature of Bay of Bengal is higher than that of Arabian Sea. Basically, Bay of Bengal has a warm pool region and Arabian Sea on the other hand has higher salinity and lower temperature when compared to the Bay of Bengal. And higher salinity and lower temperature are considered as disadvantageous to the formation of cyclone. So, the high average temperature of Bay of Bengal is one of the reasons that average cyclones occur higher on the side of Bay of Bengal. The second reason highlighted here is that of water availability. Now, the Bay of Bengal has abundant water availability. Further, there is a continuous influx of water from rivers like that of Ganga, Brahmaputra. And this fresh water influx makes sure that there is no intermixing of warm water with that of cool water below, and thus the abundant supply of water along with the continuous influx of water which allows no intermixing of warm water with the cool water that is situated below further strengthens the formation of cyclone in the Bay of Bengal branch. The next feature that is responsible for more number of cyclones in the Bay of Bengal branch is the shape of the land. Now the shape of the land at the Bay of Bengal is such that it weakens the wind system, thus allowing the winds to spin faster. For example, when compared with the Arabian Sea branch, there are stronger winds. And these stronger winds help dissipation of heat. And thus, as compared to Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, which has a weak wind system, does not allow the heat to get dissipated, which lends to intensification of cyclone and winds to spin faster, which ultimately results in more number of cyclones in the Bay of Bengal side. And the last reason that can be highlighted for more number of cyclones in the Bay of Bengal side is the offshoots of tropical cyclone. Meaning thereby, Bay of Bengal also experiences the offshoots of tropical cyclones coming from Pacific Ocean, which results in higher number of cyclones in the Bay of Bengal side. On the other hand, Arabian Sea, when compared to Bay of Bengal, is calmer. There is presence of strong winds in the Arabian Sea branch, which leads to dissipation of heat and discourages intensification of cyclone. Further, unlike the Bay of Bengal side, there is not constant supply of fresh water. Due to there is less constant supply of fresh water in the Arabian side, it allows the warm water of the surface to mix with the cold water underneath and thus reduces the subsurface temperature, which forms a critical unit for the formation of cyclone. In our previous lectures on DNS, we have already covered the formation of cyclone. Now, this article also highlights the changing trend, and it has been seen that there is a changing nature of Arabian Sea. The changing nature of Arabian Sea can be seen from the rise of sea surface temperature. As the research paper that was published in 2021 has highlighted that the subsurface sea temperature has increased over the Arabian Sea by 1.2 to 1.4 degrees centigrade in the recent decades. Further, this intensification has led to changes in the trends of Arabian Sea, which can be seen and was also reported in the research paper that there is an intensification of intensity, frequency, as well as in the duration of the cyclonic storm and the very severe cyclonic storm. And this is also seen by the data that the frequency of cyclonic storm has increased by an amount of 52% during the time period of 2001 and 2019. And at the same time, it was also highlighted in the same study that there was a 8% decrease in the cyclonic storm or the severe cyclonic storm in the Bay of Bengal side. So the Arabian Sea reported a 52% increase in the frequency of cyclonic storms, while at the same time, the Bay of Bengal side reported a 8% decrease. The next thing to understand about the changing nature of Arabian Sea is that the total duration of cyclones, as we have discussed, has also increased. And it has been reported that there has been an 80% increase in total duration of cyclone, with the increase in case of very severe cyclone on the Arabian side as high as 260%. So the trend that is highlighted here is that there is a change in the Arabian Sea character, which has led more severe cyclones that are forming and sustaining over the Arabian Sea branch, and highlights that the India's west coast is more vulnerable to the cyclone. So with this, we have covered what basically is the understanding regarding the cyclone and what recent trend is highlighted with the cyclone Biparjoy. Now, taking cue from the same article, we have designed a practice question that can be asked in the upcoming mains examination. Now, the idea while framing the question was such that to answer it in a limited 150 words. So, the answer that we have provided in the detailed PDF section is strictly adhering to the word limit of 150 words. Now, the question here says, discuss how the climate change has led to an increase in the frequency and intensity of cyclones in India. So basically the question is asking about how is climate change affecting the frequency as well as the intensity of cyclone in India. To answer this question, we'll use the intro, body and conclusion parameter. Under the introduction, we'll write about the data which suggests or highlights that there is an increasing intensity of Indian cyclones, or the data which can highlight that there is an increasing frequency of the same. In the body part, we'll try to highlight the link between the climate change and the increased cyclonic events, such that a clear link can be established between the two. And in the conclusion part, we'll highlight the way forward in the form of a National Cyclone Risk Mitigation Project, as the increasing frequency as well as the intensity of cyclone will create humanitarian crisis with potential loss of life as well as property. So, the introduction can be given for this question in the following format. In the introduction, we have said that we will use the data. So, the introduction here says, according to the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, in the last 50 years, there has been a recording 12-fold surge in the number of cyclonic events in India. Meaning thereby, we have highlighted the data that in the last 50 years, the cyclones have increased by 12 times. And then we'll talk about the body, which says climate change has increased the cyclonic events in the following way. Under the climate change, the first impact is that of increased sea surface temperature. Now, due to anthropogenic factors, excess heat has been generated, and the global ocean has absorbed 90% of the excess heat that has been generated. Now, due to this higher absorption of the excess heat that has been generated by ocean, it has led to higher convection and rapid intensification of cyclone. As a second fact in body, we will talk about rising sea level. Now, the rising sea level is attributed to the Antarctic melting, and due to the Antarctic melting, there has been increased moisture availability in case of cyclone, which helps the formation of cyclone. Meaning thereby the increased moisture availability helps the formation of cyclones, and this can be regarded as the second impact of the climate change. The third impact of climate change, which has contributed to increase in the frequency and intensity, is the microclimatic changes that have happened on land, because there has been also incidences of local heating of coastal lands that has also contributed to the adjacent ocean being heating up, and has sometimes led to formation of cyclones, which ultimately contributed to the increased frequency. The fourth reason that can be highlighted here is the changing weather events. Changing weather events like that of El Nino and rising marine heat waves have led to prolonged warm period over the ocean. And due to this prolonged warm period, it has led to reduced upwelling that allows the mixing of cold water with that of hot water and reduces the intensity. But due to prolonged warm period, this upwelling has been reduced, which has led to further intensification of cyclones. The next reason that can be highlighted as a link between climate change and that of cyclone is the higher atmospheric temperature that is prevalent, and this higher atmospheric temperature is a result of anthropogenic warming again. And last link between the climate change and that of cyclone is the changes in the wind system that have been occurring. Now, this is a peculiar feature, as it was seen that on some occasions intense winds have driven low pressure area to other region. For example, we can here mention about the Gulab cyclone, which shifted to Arabian Sea from Bay of Bengal. So changes in the wind system also contributes to the intensification of cyclone and highlights the climate change and its relation with that of cyclones in India, which have seen increase in frequency as well as intensity. Now that we have addressed introduction as well as the body, we will conclude by saying that there is a need for the implementation of second phase of National Cyclone Risk Mitigation Project, especially on the western coast, in order to reduce the potential loss of life as well as property. So with this, we have answered and linked climate change to that of cyclone. Moving on to the next article of the day, the article has featured on page 11 of the Hindu under the text and context section, and basically talks about the issue of Telegram bots that were in news from some time. Now, the article mentions basically that few reports have surfaced that are stating that a Telegram bot was able to retrieve and display identification numbers from vaccination documents including Aadhaar. This is second in line when in 2021 a bot on the platform was discovered selling phone numbers that were extracted from the Facebook. According to security researchers, a network of deepfake bots have been identified on the platform of Telegram, which are generating non-consensual images using the images of individuals submitted by the users. Now, the topic of bots is particularly important from the science and technology section and the changes that are currently involved. This also becomes important from the perspective of internal security in the cyberspace. So this topic is basically important for the general studies 3 perspective, as in the matter of science and tech,
as well as the cybersecurity. Now, a question in prelims examination in 2020 was asked about the state of development of artificial intelligence and the options were given for the same. Try to answer the question of the PYQ. Now through this article, we'll try to understand basically what are bots, what purpose or what are the different applications of the bots. We'll try to analyze the beneficial and the malicious use of bots, how bots on Telegram pose a threat to cybersecurity of individuals, and at the last, we'll also try to understand what can be done to counter the menace of bots. So this article is important both for prelims as well as the mains perspective. The first thing to understand here is what are. Now a bot refers to a computer program basically designed to carry out tasks automatically, and thus the primary purpose of bot is to gather information from the internet or to execute repetitive tasks at a much faster pace. Now that we have understood what basically are bots and what do they do, there are various applications of bots in present days. The first application of bot is the chatbots that are very popular these days. Now the chatbots are capable of engaging in conversation with the user to accomplish some of the specific objectives. And a prime example of this is the chatbot of Facebook, that is Hi Poncho, which tells about the weather around us. The next application of bot is that of web spindering. Meaning thereby, it is an application where an automated script fetches, analyzes and organizes data from the web servers at a speed which far exceeds the human capabilities. The next application of bot is that of it automates tasks. It performs the automation of tasks like that of setting alarms or providing for weather updates or conducting online searches. And the best example for these type of automation can be seen with popular applications like that of Siri, Clippy, etc. The next application of bot is with one map, it can have multiple bots. And these multiple bots will perform multiple functions like that of ordering food, checking of sports score, etc. And at the last, recently there is also emergence of artificial intelligence based bots. And these artificial intelligence or the AI based bots are being increasingly used by organizations to provide for the services like that of customer care, sales, and to cater to marketing services. So these are the some of the application of bots. However, apart from the beneficial purposes that a bot serve, there are also malicious bots that have been identified. And malicious bot performs the functions like that of collecting passwords, logging keystrokes, and acquiring basic financial information about the people. They are also used sometimes to distribute spam and exploiting the vulnerabilities that are created by viruses and worms. Now we'll try to understand the use of bots for malicious purposes. Now the bots are basically used for malicious purposes in the form of spam bots. Spam bots performs the function of harvesting email addresses from the contact. And it has been reported that bot attacks have impacted 94% of the websites worldwide. The next type of bot that is used for malicious purpose is the downloader program. These downloader program malicious bots are suckers of bandwidth and they download entire website. Malicious bots are also used as viruses and worms and are basically used for the DDoS attacks, that is for distributed denial of service attack, which the basic purpose is to disrupt normal traffic of any targeted server, service or a network. They are also used for the sometimes increase the traffic count for the websites, which can be used by the analytical reporting to extract money from the advertisers at the end. Bots are sometimes also used for the purpose of buying good seats at concerts or public events, which are then resold by the brokers, extracting huge profits through black marketing. And last use of the bots today is in the field of internet trolls that is happening, as bots can be created and used on internet forum like that of Facebook or Twitter to automatically post inflammatory or nonsensical posts to disrupt the forum and anger the users. And this is the reason why there is a concern regarding the malicious use of bots on Telegram also. And the security concerns that have been highlighted is that certain bots may possess security vulnerabilities that can be exploited by the threat actors, which compromises ultimately on the security of the end users. Sometimes, as we have seen, bot can be used to create harmful content such as links that are basically phishing websites or active malware. These bots are also utilized on Telegram with the intention of scamming the end users, meaning thereby they entice them by promising high rewards or discount, and when these bots are clicked, they trick them into divulging their personal information, and ultimately they become the victim at the end of cybercrime. Further, these bots, when introduced on the Telegram platform, can weaken the level of encryption that the platform provides. And some of the bots do not employ Telegram encryption tool. Because these bots do not employ the Telegram encryption tool, they scrambles and renders the messages that are to be sent illegible during their transit. So we have seen that the security concerns regarding the Telegram bots are multi-pronged, ranging from malwares to the phishing websites or divulging of personal information to creating the cybercrime issues related to the end user. So this brings us to the last part of our discussion, that what can be done to solve the problem of bots. So what can be done is to adopt an anti-bot technique by the use of CAPTCHA. CAPTCHA, which basically is a Turing test which is used to distinguish between a human user and a less sophisticated AI powered bot. But it is to be understood that these CAPTCHAs are not foolproof, as they are not able to prevent bots and are circumvented. The second way in which the bots can be tackled is the installation of anti-malware software. There is a need for regular software as well as system updates, and these should not be ignored. Further, there is also a need to generate awareness among the users to carefully review the terms of service and privacy policy that is associated with each bot. So with this, we have discussed what basically are bots, what are the various applications of bots. We've also seen the use of malicious bots and how they are used in different areas to attack the personal information or to conduct cybercrime. And at the end, we have also discussed about the specific issues related to the Telegram bots and the way forward for the same. Moving on to the next article of the day, the article has appeared on page 14 of the Hindu and basically talks about the recent decision of the government on the open market sales scheme. Now, the article mentions that the states are looking for alternative as the center has restricted the FCI purchase in a recent steps that have been taken in this regard. Now, this article is important from the General Studies 3 perspective, as basically the General Studies 3 talks about the storage, transport and marketing of agricultural produce and the issues that are related to it. It also talks about the issues related to public distribution system, issues of buffer stocks and that related to food security. And thus this area becomes important from the perspective of mains examination. Also, the open market schemes and about the Food Corporation of India can be asked in the prelims examination. So this article basically is important for both prelims as well as mains perspective. Through this article, we'll try to understand what basically is the open market sales. So the first thing to understand here is that Food Corporation of India goes for the procurement. And the government policy of procurement of food grain has the broad objective of ensuring MSP to the farmers and at the same time ensure the availability of food grains to the weaker section at the affordable prices. So in this regard, government goes for market intervention to keep the prices under check and also to ensure remunerative prices to farmers. In this article, we'll also try to understand what basically is the open market sales scheme. Now, the open market sales schemes basically stand for selling of food grains by the government or their agencies at predetermined prices in the open market from time to time in order to enhance the supply of food grains, especially during the lean season, and also in order to moderate the market price. And this serves as the basic objective of the FCI behind the open market scale scheme, meaning thereby they sell wheat and rice in the open market as and when they are directed from the government to do so in order to cater to the demand, especially during the lean season, and to ensure price stability. Now the next thing that will come into mind is the mode of auction that happens through which the open market sales happen. And the mode of auction for the level of transparency has been adopted as the method of e-auction, under which the e-auction is conducted by FCI on a weekly basis through the platform of commodity exchange, that is the NCDEX, meaning thereby the National Commodity and Derivative Exchange Limited is utilized for the purpose of e-auction. The next thing that needs to be understood about the open market scale scheme is that who are the participants, and it is to be understood that the state governments as well as the union territories are allowed to participate in this e-auction. Next in line is the pricing. At what price these open market scales are conducted. So it is to be understood that the Food Corporation of India sets up a reserve price for the open market sales schemes to happen. And the bidders are not allowed to quote below the reserve price. The open market scale schemes basically has three components. It comprises of sale of wheat to bulk consumers or the private traders through the method of e-auction. So apart from the state and the UTs, private traders are also allowed to participate in the e-auction method. It also allows sale of wheat to bulk consumers or private traders through e-auctions by dedicated movement. And under the third component of open market scale scheme is the sale of raw rice, that is of grade A, to bulk consumers, private traders through the method of e-auction. So by now what we have seen is the understanding of open market scale scheme, which is nothing but selling of food grains by the government at the predetermined prices in order to enhance the supply of food grains during the lean season or to moderate the market prices for the same. And it is one of the objectives of the Food Corporation of India while they are selling wheat and rice. The mode of auction is that of e-auction, and the participants are the private traders or the bulk traders. Apart from the states and union territories can also participate in it, and the basic reserve price is set by the Food Corporation of India, below which there can be no bidding. So the next thing that comes into mind is that what is that new tussle or what changes have been made. The recent changes that have been made to the open market scale schemes is related to that of limits on quantity that has been procured. Now, under the recent changes made, the maximum quantity that a bidder can purchase in a single bid is now restricted to the ranges from 10 to 100 metric tons. And this has been done to ensure enhanced reach, as by reducing the maximum quantity that one bidder can procure, the reach government seems to be enhancing, as it could accommodate more small as well as marginal buyers. Further, it will also lead to immediate availability of food grains to the end users. The next recent change that has been done to the scheme is the exclusion of the state governments have been made. As per the revised policy of the government has decided to exclude state government from the open market sales schemes to maintain adequate stock level in the central pool. And also, under the recent changes, there is an exception regarding the northeastern states and hilly states and the states that are currently facing natural disasters or law and order issue are incorporated under as exception. So this brings us to the question that why these changes were necessary. The first explanation of this is to have control on inflation and protect the interest of the consumer. The second is that we have already is to accommodate small buyers that would also lead to the wider reach. Further, it will also help the government to meet its other obligation. Meaning thereby, by restricting the state government, it will increase the availability of food grain in the central pool, and this surplus buffer can be utilized by the government for the distribution of food grains to 80 crore beneficiaries under the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. But it also will lead to a necessary implication as the state government will now have to procure food grains from the open market at a higher cost. And this can also worsen the already ever increasing food subsidy bill. So we have also discussed why were the changes needed to control inflation, to promote or increase the reach, and also for the government or meet the obligations under the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. As the last part of our discussion, we will try to understand the Food Corporation of India. Now, the Food Corporation of India is basically a statutory body that was set up in 1965. And the motive behind setting up a Food Corporation of India was the backdrop of major shortage of grains, especially wheat in the country. It is to be understood that the nodal ministry is the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution for the Food Corporation of India. The vision of Food Corporation of India is clear, that is, it is to ensure food security for the citizens of the country. Apart from ensuring the food security of the country, the other objective of the Food Corporation of India is to ensure the interest of the farmers, and the interest of the farmers is secured through effective price support. The Food Corporation of India also ensures proper distribution of food grains through the public distribution system, and at the last also to maintain and ensure proper operation of the buffer stock of food grains to ensure the national food security. So with this, we have also discussed the important provisions regarding the Food Corporation of India. During our discussion, we have seen the recent changes that have been made to the open market sales scheme, why these changes were necessary, and also we have understood what basically is the open market sales scheme is. Moving on to the last article of the day, the article has featured on page 10 of the Hindu and basically talks about the China's developmental security approach that has been adopted in the recent time. Now the article mentions that the Cyberspace Administration of China has announced that the US chip giant Micron, which has been under investigation by the Cybersecurity Review Office, has failed to obtain a security clearance because the Micron products have posed a threat to the national security of China. Further, in the recent time, we have discussed in the previous DNS also that the business operators which are tied to critical information infrastructure in China were advised not to procure Micron products. This step is seen as a recent crackdown by the Chinese government against the American consultancies and the domestic firms. Apart from Micron, before also, consultancy firm Bain & Co. from America were raided and the employees in China were questioned. And before Bain & Co., another American organization named Mints was raided and some of the employees were detained, forcing the firm to shut down the offices. So what basically this highlights is the growing tension between United States and China. Though we have also seen that in the recent time there have been instances where United States is taking an approach that is more comprehensive and consultative with regard to China, where they talk about de-risking, but such initiatives have also not gone well with the China. Now this topic is important from the perspective of general studies too, that is the international relations, and deals with the effect of the policies of developed and the developing countries on India. So the first thing to understand here is why is the Chinese government cracking down on the US firm. The first reason that can be here explained is that now US has tightened the export control as a part of its new Washington Consensus. We have some days before covered the old Washington Consensus and the new Washington Consensus. Under the 5 principles of the new Washington Consensus, one deals with the export controls, and which would make it harder for China to obtain and manufacture advanced computing chips and supercomputers from America. Thus, the action of the Chinese authorities appears to be motivated by the vengeance against the US-led effort to constrain Chinese tech advancement. this is the first reason that can be highlighted behind the Chinese move on such a crackdowns. The second reason that can be highlighted is the heckling of American firms, which is done with the motive of restricting their access to the Chinese market, which is very large, such that China can capitalize on the divergence that exists between the US administration or the US policymakers and the American business community. Now, it is to be remembered that in America, lobbying is very common and the interest of business community provides a critical input in the foreign policy making of the government of the day. And this can also be testified by the fact that one of the biggest company in America, Nvidia's founder, had previously expressed his concern over the US export control measures against China, as he believes that it would involve repercussions from the Chinese side. And China is very important for a tech giant like Nvidia, which contributes around 11% of the global earning of Nvidia. So they seek to create divergence between the American firms and the US administration and seek to bring in changes in the foreign policy of America towards China. Now, before we go further, we need to understand what basically first is the non-traditional security. The non-traditional security is a gamut of human security concerns that go beyond the traditional security concerns like that of boundary, military, etc. It includes non-traditional security concerns like that of climate change, shortage of food resources, energy, diseases, natural disaster, transnational crime, human and drug trafficking, and also the issue of cyber security and data information security. And this has been analyzed, that is, the non-traditional security has been analyzed by the analyst as human security developmental nexus, and thus is against the concept of traditional security concerns, which includes territorial encroachment. So this is what non-traditional security concern is, which includes things like climate change, shortage of food resources, energy, infectious diseases, transnational crime, human and drug trafficking, cyber security, and the data information security. And China is now working on the developmental security approach. So now that we have understood non-traditional security, we need to focus on why basically security has come forefront in the Chinese politics. Now, the Beijing has justified every action that it has taken in the line of national security concerns, as the Chinese discourse now believes that the idea of development cannot be isolated from the idea of security. First thing. The second is that China has always reiterated from some time its support for the cause of security, and it was even emphasized during the 20th Party Congress last year, wherein the Xi Jinping has emphasized the need to balance development with that of security. And China in the recent time has provided that the non-traditional security issues have acquired greater significance in its developmental narrative. And among the all non-traditional security issues, the greatest security issues for China today is that of cyber security. Further, the Chinese government has recently introduced a law. The law says to treat all documents, data, material, items related to national security and interest at par with the state secrets, and thus have broadened the scope of espionage. And further, the same law has also expanded the meaning of espionage to include cyber attacks against the state government or critical information infrastructure. And it is through this law that the Chinese have empowered their authorities to seize data, electronic equipment, and information on personal property, and even propose a ban across the border. So, a combined reading of all the steps that have been taken by the Chinese with regard to the comprehensive national security that was first introduced in the year 2014 suggests that the concept of national security for China has permeated each and every aspect of governance and the developmental strategy. And this approach is what we call as a recent approach of China to the developmental security, where in the several foreign businesses that are currently operating in China are to be said in entering or indulging in espionage. As China believes that these large consultancy firms are leveraging their vast networks to extract sensitive data under the garb of free exchange of information. These authorities also suspect that the installation of backdoors by the US tech companies is at the behest of the US government. So basically, what China wants to do is to secure that the tech giants of US that are working in China cannot have full access to the Chinese data and it cannot be utilized against the Chinese cause. So this brings us to the last part of our discussion. We have seen that developmental security approach has now been adopted by China, where it believes that the idea of development cannot be isolated from that of security, with full regard to the non-traditional security concern of cyber security. So what is in there for India? From Indian perspective, it presents an outright contradiction when the Chinese relationship is considered with India. As China on one hand stress the need for hyphenating development with security and calls for India to dehyphenate the security issue, that is with regard to the border, which is a traditional security concern, with that of relation in the field of economics. So it highlights a contradiction wherein at one hand China wants to continue its economic engagement strongly with India, but at the same time does not want to address the border issue, which is a traditional security concern between India and China. So with this article, we have seen the contradiction. We also understood the new developmental security concern of China and the new laws that has been passed by China to increase the scope of espionage. We've also understood what basically is the non-traditional security. Now, non-traditional security can even be asked in your GS paper 3, as non-traditional security is a more pressing concern for majority of countries now.